Oh, I forgot to send out notification. Give me a few minutes, you guys. I gotta send out some notifications. We'll start in a few minutes. Okay. So right now I'm just sending out some notifications. If you guys aren't already, you guys can follow the Twitter and the Instagram. There's the Instagram, or the Twitter, yeah, Instagram, and there's the Twitter. Today is going to be really good too, by the way. We're only going to do one chapter, but there's quite a bit to say about it. So it's going to be Matthew chapter 25. I don't know if you guys have a Bible. I do show it on screen though, so if you don't worry about it. Let me just send out 2 more notifications here and we'll start. I usually do this early. Kind of got distracted right before I started. Alright, here we go. Let's get started. No more waiting. Alright. So, welcome back to another Bible study. We do this every week on Sunday, which is today. I might move it over to Monday because I do know that like a lot of churches and like sometimes there's other church things going on or other religious things on Sunday. So people who might want to make it to it live, because you guys can ask questions if you want. I actually encourage it. So it will help, I think, a lot of people if I just do it on Mondays. So there's a good chance that we're going to be going over to Monday. But we'll be doing Sundays at least for a little bit until I fully make that commitment. With that being said, I did not do it last Sunday. It was Mother's Day. Hopefully you guys had a good Mother's Day. So we're going to be doing chapter 25, and there's the social medias if you guys want to follow, Twitter, Instagram. But we're going to bring up the Bible. There it is. So if you guys don't have it, you can follow along. Okay. So the next chapter, which is going to be 26, is the longest one I've came across yet, and it's like 75 verses. It's almost 2 full pages. So I figured it'd be best to do that by itself, because I was gonna do 2 and then I was like, yeah, we'll do 1. And as I got into this, it's actually pretty good because I have plenty to say about all of this, and as a lot of the stuff that we've came across so far, it's important. Like everything literally is super important, especially in the New Testament when it's, you know, when Jesus is saying things. Yeah, the Old Testament is still important, but, you know, it's kind of more about the history and events, stuff like that. So this, you know, I've said it many times, but Jesus is really reconstructing some of the confusion and things that have happened over the years before he came. So like many years, decades, where people, you know, people who are like the Pharisees, the ones who got Jesus crucified to begin with, like they claim to be holy and, you know, doing, you know, what God wanted and stuff. So like, and I truly believe that some of them actually thought that they were doing things with good intentions, but they still weren't. Like they got it twisted. So if they're easily manipulated and you know, led astray, or, you know, are misinformed, then I can't imagine people who are not even trying or thinking or know much about, you know, God or the Bible. And that's why we do this, because it's the most important book out there, right? Seriously, it really is. It's the oldest book out there and it's the most important. So what better thing to do than at least know what it says. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get into it. It starts out with the parable of the 10 virgins, and there's gonna be there's 2 parables back to back, and then the last part is, it says it's like the judgment. And it kind of reiterates a little bit about the kingdom of heaven, but in a way that is, all this is like really, really good. And it helps us understand more in detail what it exactly means in the eyes of God. Okay? Which is super, super important. Because that's all that matters, right? Like, if you're, I mean, it's a little bit different in court cases because there's the jury, but you got the judge, right? So it's like, it's important what the jury and the judge see and feel, right? Because that's what your judgment is based upon. Same thing with God, is our judgment is based upon his view, nothing else. So this is really, really good. So it says, then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. And first, I want to mention, when it says virgins in the Bible, it does not, it doesn't necessarily speak of virginity, okay? A lot of people think that because that's the way we nowadays, perceive that word. But virgins basically means the ability to be able to bear a child, right? So like up to that certain age where you can bear a child, but it stands more so for purity, right? Because, beforehand kind of thing, like it's about purity, in a sense. So, but okay, so and here, I mean, it usually refers to women, so, but regardless of that, because that's not the concept, that has nothing to really do with any of this, but I just wanted to reiterate that since it's the first time we came across that word in the Bible, because it does get mentioned a few times. But so the bridegroom is coming, which is the man of the wedding, okay? And a lot of people, like famous people, right, when they have a wedding, people want to attend in a way. Like, that's kind of like when somebody is the bridegroom of importance, people they're waiting and they want to partake or participate or be even outside of the wedding, but they want to be involved, okay? It's somebody important. It's their wedding day. They know about it. They're waiting. So they want to get involved. That's what this is going to talk about a little bit here. So out of the 10 virgins, it says, verse 2 says, 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them, right? So they just took the lamps. They're already on fire. They already have a little oil in it. They figured that's all they needed. Meanwhile, like back in those days, they didn't have light bulbs. They didn't have flashlights. So they used lamps. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. Okay. So vessel is like a pouch or like a container. So they took extra oil with them, right? Because they were smart, they were wise. They were like, well, like the what if it takes longer than we think, right? Don't want to run out of oil. You can always put it back. You can always whatever, right? Or use it later. Verse 5. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. Tarried means to like slow down or stop places or like, okay, take your time. So the bridegroom wasn't traveling fast. Especially to the virgins. They thought he would be there faster. So they ended up, instead of it being today, it was tomorrow. So they had to sleep throughout the night. Their oil lamps they kept burning. Meanwhile, verse 6, and at midnight there was a cry made, behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. So, he just enters the city. His people are calling out, hey, he's here, You know, come to the bridegroom who they've been waiting for this whole time. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And I learned this back in those days. You had to actually trim the lamps, because to get a nice bright lit flame, because if it wasn't trimmed correctly, sometimes it would smoke, sometimes it would have hot spots. So they had to continuously trim the lamps, the wicks, when the oil is coming up, right? The oil is coming through the wick. They had to continuously trim this. And this is something that, like, even like on ships, think of, like, I don't know, medieval time pirates, kind of, like, they actually had people on the ships who was in charge of, that was their job. Just like you had people who did the sails, you had people who trimmed the wicks. All right. And fun fact, when light bulbs and electricity finally came out, they still called them I think wick trimmers is the name that they used. So wick trimmers was still the word that was used for a few years or a decade for electricians before they were called electricians. Fun fact. So basically, it's not really that important, but I thought it was pretty interesting. I always like good information. So anyways, they woke up, they hear that he's coming, they trim their lamps, and it says, verse 8, it says, and the foolish said unto the wise, give us your oil, for our lamps are gone out. They ran out of oil because it was burning all last night, right? Because they expected him to come soon, and he came late. But the wise answered, saying, not so, because basically, because if we give, we won't have enough for you. Like, if I give you some oil, I won't have enough for you and me, so I can't give you any, or else we'll both be screwed. But go ye rather them that sell it and buy it for yourself. They said, go, hurry up and go buy some, so hopefully you can come back before he's gone. Let's see, verse 10. Yep, verse 10. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went with him to the marriage, to the wedding, and the door was shut. Afterward came also those virgins, saying, the ones who needed oil, they went and bought oil. They came back, they said, Lord, Lord, open up the gate, open to us. But he answered and said, verily I say unto you, and remember, this is so important, because earlier in Matthew, in one of our early Bible studies, people who even were following, thought they were doing good, or like following God, or did some nice deeds in a way, which we're also going to reiterate with the next parable, which is it's really good. It's really, really good. It'll really help open up your eye of your purpose. I think that's one of the most common things in the world is, people want to know why we're here, and like, what's my purpose in life? What am I supposed to do? Everybody's always searching that answer. People tend to look at just careers and they think that's like the answer, but it's not. It's like, it might involve your career in a way, but it's not the way you thought it was. But we'll get to that in a second. So it's very, very important. So good. Yeah, so the bridegroom says, he says, no, I'm not going to open up the door, because I know you not. I don't know you. Now, the bridegroom in this situation is, well, the answer, the person saying, I know you not, that's going to be God. Okay? That is like the judgment, right? When the bridegroom is coming, that's basically when God sends Jesus back. Think of it like that, because it doesn't matter. People like to argue about some of the little silliest things instead of the concept. Like, Jesus is coming, his second coming, but like God has to okay it and God has to send him, right? So like without God being in charge and doing it, it would never happen. Because people like to they spend so much time with like the division of the two, but it all starts with God, period. The Holy Spirit starts with God. Jesus starts with God. God is the Almighty. Even though it like says things like, when we go to get judged, God's gonna be there, and on his right hand side is gonna be Jesus. Okay, but like it doesn't matter because like it's irrelevant. But it's all together. Think of it all as one. Okay, because that's all that really matters. So in Revelations, and even in last Bible study that we did, the disciples asked Jesus, when is the end of the world going to be? And he gave really, really good examples and answers. So if you missed it, you can always go back in the video, in the previous video stream, Bible study. And I'm sure we'll end up talking about it more. So we are the virgins, okay? So we are the ones in this parable, which is like a story, an example, basically. We're the ones who are the virgins waiting, right? We're waiting for what we are told and what we learn and what we believe, that, Jesus died on the cross, and that things will come to pass where, just like Revelations, the very last chapter in the Bible, ends up stating that, like the world's going to become chaotic, which it has been every day. I think we can all agree on that. But it comes a point where God says enough is enough, and then he sends Jesus with his angels to come back. And then there's a rapture, so he takes his people away. And then there's like a bunch of like 7-year tribulation, like a lot of, you think it's bad by the time he comes, you think it's bad now, you think it's going to get worse until he finally does come. And then when he does come and he takes us away, it's going to be even worse for those who are still here, like, and for quite a long time. So, and man is still going to be trying to rule and have control over the earth and the world, because that's what they suffer from. They suffer from greed and control and power. That's kind of like what's putting us into this big mess right now as we stand. And one of the things that Revelation says, and the prophecy that God gives John, it is that like when God has like the final straw before he comes, before Jesus' second coming, is basically when Israel is going to be pretty much on its last, I guess you could say on its last leg. It's like last hope. God always works when you least expect it. Think about it like when you lose something. You lost something and you're trying to find it. Usually you don't give up right away. You check where you thought it was, not there. You check somewhere else, not there. You check somewhere else, not there. You're about to give up hope, and then you're like, I'll check one more time, or I'll look a little bit deeper, and then all of a sudden you find it, right? It's like you went through all that, faith that you would find it, but you didn't give up, and then as soon as you're about to like do your last check, you find it. That's how God works, okay? And it's all about a test of faith, right? So, because God wants those who are truly, truly faithful, people who truly, truly believe. That's how he can test. He tests our faith, because people who have weak faith and fall short, he doesn't want to begin with. Like, he wants us all. Don't get me wrong. He wants every soul and every believer. He wants everybody to believe in the truth. Like if he is real, it would be the truth, right? So he wants us to believe and he wants us to follow him, but he doesn't want people who are just acting like it or have weak faith, like, oh, I'll do it a little bit for my sake. A lot of people do that for their own sake. They do it because they feel they feel a little bit guilty or bad, or like, like, I'll give it a try. Like, that's not what God wants. God doesn't want people who are, I call them wishy-washy, God's not for that. God's for the strong, faithful. So that's why he tests our faith. And to speak about the prophecy in Revelation, because I did read it and stuff, and it kind of involves with what's going on today, which I think is pretty important. So like right now, you probably heard about how Israel and the Gaza Strip, the Palestinians, Hamas, in a way, inside of the Palestinians, are having conflict. They're shooting missiles and killing innocent people. There have been kids and children who have died. I know I've read where one Israel child has died and 9 Palestinian children have died. And I think it's probably even more than that by now. But there's been like a lot of casualties. Over 100 deaths in just a week. And I feel a lot of people don't fully understand what's really going on. Because when it comes down to it, you got to understand, just because the Bible says like Jerusalem and Israel is like, it was meant to be God's, like, the Holy Land for his people, but that doesn't mean over time that it has got corrupted with some people. Not everybody who's in charge or lives in Jerusalem and Israel or their government is not a follower of Christ. When I say follower of Christ, I mean 100%. Not like kind of, sort of, sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And that's where a lot of people, I think, they don't grasp that idea. So they just are saying, hey, let's support Israel. Let's support Israel. Let's support Israel. Yes, but at the same time, Israel is doing just as bad. Technically, in the whole open side of things, Israel is actually killing more people than the Palestinians. But it's not really the Palestinians, it's Hamas, which is like some people who are resorting to violence to defend what they believe and also their land and territory and rituals. That's what it is. So this is kind of like what's happening. And it kind of, like, I read a whole article and it even said, is like, it seems like the president of Israel is like trying to stir the pot. Like, he's trying to bring things to a boil. And now all of a sudden he's saying, oh, well, I want to calm it down now. You can't go killing some people in a nation a lot more than what's happening. Like, you can't be bringing the fight to other people and suppressing them more and then back off and then expect peace. That's not how it works with people. You angered people and now they want a vengeance. They want revenge, and you know what I'm saying? So, and they may have lost somebody who was part of their family or their friends or something. Like, you did not, if you wanted peace, you would have never done that to begin with. What does it say in the Bible? It says, thou shalt not murder. Okay? So, when the government okays for the military and the police to create harm that could result in, because, like, what is it? Love thy neighbor as thyself. So when you're giving command to people who, that's their job, like the police, that's their job, the military, that's their job, all they do is listen to higher command. When the higher command is not following God's standards, you're sending so many people to do more harm that it's not God's will. So this is kind of what happened is they have like there's a holy mosque that is I apologize if I'm saying it wrong, but there is a like a holy building where the Palestinians, Muslims, come and they worship, right? Because in theory, the more you understand a little bit about just religions in general, like, we are all kind of trying to serve the same God to an extent. So, like, these are innocent people for the most part who are, just good-hearted people, innocent people who are just trying to, like, do their religion. That's, or like their worship, basically. Let's say it like that. They're trying to do their worship because everybody has different ceremonies and how they do things. So they're trying to do their worship. Now here's the problem. Because it's in Israel and Israel feels threatened because of past history, which I think is a big part of like the problem in our world and society in general, we like to always dwell on the past and look in the past. So we are quick to assume that that culture or those people are always the same, or also that they can't change because, you know, like even in the eyes of God, like a murderer can be forgiven, right? But I mean, if he truly means it, he's gonna truly commit and he's gonna do everything in his might to not be the way he used to be. So like people can change, but like we as a society like to assume and stereotype, so we hold those grudges, and because we hold on to it, it creates tension and conflict forever and ever, and we'll never get past it. We'll never be able to overcome it because we're never ever forgiving of the situation in the past and the culture and people's mistakes and all that stuff, right? So things will never ever get resolved. So Israel feels like always on edge and tension and stuff. So what they do is when those innocent people are coming to worship, they have police lined up. They are not letting certain people in, kind of. They're like pushing them around in a way. They're instigating, right? Think about a fight. Like they're basically shoving people. Think of it like that. Like two people in a fight, right? Two people are already like really have a bad history with one another, right? They have beef, right? They have beef with one another. So you got Israel, you got the Gaza Strip Palestinians. They already got beef with each other because their governments and stuff have not come to a higher understanding of God's will, and they're not living it, so they're not able to come together through love instead of hatred, right? So they're not willing to like forgive one another and like this and that, right? So there's this standoff. Now, whenever two people have beef with one another, as soon as what happens? Somebody says, "Get out of my face! Don't get in my face!" They push them. That's what Israel did. Israel like pushed them, like get out of our face. When you push somebody, when you have beef with them, they're gonna retaliate. Okay? So yes, Hamas started shooting rockets, and yes, that's wrong. Yes, it needs to be dealt with. But Hamas, those, and I don't like to use the word Hamas. I like to use more so like the evil ones, right? The sinners, the evil ones that are willing to kill inside that population because it's on both sides. Okay? Those people are, they kind of hide inside their society, inside their city with innocent people around, and they're shooting rockets. Okay? So it's hard to find them and it's hard to target them, but Israel did not care. And plus I heard that like, because they don't have like the best military missiles and stuff, that one out of every 3, I think it is, ends up falling on their own city. So as they're trying to retaliate, they're actually hurting their own people at the same time. They're risking their own people at the same time. But it's because, well, they don't have nothing else left. So they feel the need that it's better than nothing, we gotta try. So they're shooting, right? And, you know, some hit in Israel, whatever, they're defending most of it. They have shelters, bomb shelters, where they're a lot more fortunate when it comes to this. They're like, compared to the other people. And then all of a sudden, the next day or whatever, Israel retaliates and like majorly, okay? So if they did a small attack, they did a big attack. And when they did a big attack, they blew up buildings and dropped them down and killed many innocent people during the process because they just wanted to they wanted to make sure they got that 1 or 2 bad guys that they think or know that is there. So then they commit a huge blast, causing many, many casualties. Okay, so like, even if it's like, thou shalt not kill, but like, they're taking it to an even more extreme measure where they're killing so many innocent people. So it's like, but like, those people are hiding amongst them, or you know, but that doesn't, period, it doesn't give you the right to do it. especially in the eyes of God. Those, like, imagine being the person who gave the order to allow it to happen, and then you die the next day, then you're in front of God. And he's going to say, so you, in just one day, you've killed 100 innocent people, and you got 1 or 2 bad guys. You got two evil people who was willing to commit murder, just as you have. God's going to say, I do not know you. And he's going to cast them into hell. Because thou shalt not kill. Like, and I don't think everybody is understanding that, because everybody's trying to defend and say it, like, you know, because don't get me wrong, like, I understand that, like, Israel was meant to be the Holy Land, and I get the fact that, like, you know, in the end times, there will be many nations that are going to go after Israel. And when Israel looks like they lost hope, like think of like World War III, basically. And it's going to be like, because it's going to end up involving the whole world. Okay. When this happens, it's going to come down to pretty much 2 sides. Those who are willing to defend and help Israel for whatever reasons. Hopefully it's the right reasons. Hopefully they understand the things I'm saying, because like that's when you know that you're fighting for good. But there's a different way of doing it when you have God, because you let God be in control. With all these armies and militaries, they're not letting God be in control. They are trusting their military might and their weapons. So they're looking into the physical world. They're not looking into the spiritual world and letting God do what God does. Because, like, I'll give you an example. The walls of Jericho. How did they destroy the walls of Jericho? They went around, I think, 7 times with trumpets. Because that's what God told them to do. And then the walls came down through trumpets. We all know in the physical world that trumpets cannot destroy a concrete wall, but with God, it can. God can do whatever he wants, how he wants, but he has to be working through the person who's following him 100%, and God will do what is justified. That's not what's happening today. In like all these wars, like literally all these wars and battles, none of that's happening. And then another example is in the Old Testament. It'd be nice once we get to it, so like you can see the actual scripture, but like I'm telling you about the story so you can like look it up if you wanted to find the scripture. Just type in Google like walls of Jericho, King James Version Bible, boom, you'll have all the scriptures. Go to the scripture, read the story, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But the other one I was wanting to talk about is like there was I can't remember who it is and stuff, but there was like this one army who was threatening, and like they wanted war. They're threatening this other nation. They had many soldiers. Like I want to say like at least 10 times more. But God told the leader of the other side, he said, go ahead and line up for war. I'll take care of it. I'll be there with you. And he had faith to listen. He lined up with his army. And it says that the enemy, God made it so that way the enemy saw more army than what he had. So they actually had 10 times more, but in his eyes, they had like 10 times less, because he could see chariots of fire and stuff. If you know anything about the Bible and stories, you might have heard about this story before, but because I can't remember who it was and what battle and stuff. But this is like the power of God. This is how God works in war. Okay, but it doesn't work nowadays because all our government they're not Christians. They're not Christians. They're not following God. If you're not following God 100%, you're not a Christian. Okay, I can't express that enough. Just because you say it, claim it, does not mean you are. Just as simple as that. So our military specialists and stuff, they're all worried about physical planning and strategic stuff, blah 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 blah, without God. God is not involved in any of it. So, and that's what's been happening so long, and it'll continue to happen. So like the whole Israel thing, I feel like a lot of Christians, because I'm seeing it more and more, but I feel like a lot of Christians are kind of trying to jump in because they know about Revelation and they know Israel. Like Jesus will come, like he says it when Israel, the Holy Land is having a conflict, a war. At the very end, God will intervene. But it says many nations will rise up against him. Right now, it's kind of just one. But the more Israel's provoking, as they are, they're actually triggering more than just the Gaza Strip and the Palestinians. They're actually probably pissing off the whole Muslim culture, because it's their people. It's still their people and it's still their religion. So it's like they feel like, and in a way, they're kind of justified. In a way, but like, two wrongs don't make a right. Always remember that. Two wrongs don't make a right, and any kind of killing is not what God would want. So like, the way they're behaving and trying to solve the issue is not godly. So like, that's why it's happening. So, but I can see how what is happening now is going to trigger and create more chaos in the future. And it has a high chance, especially with everything else that's happening in the world and has been happening. I can really see how things are escalating even faster and faster, and becoming, in the prophecies, I can see it coming more into fruition, into whatever, like it's coming into sight more and more when you know how to look at it. Like, God has shown me how to look at things and how to see things even before they are apparent to a lot of other people, let's say. Like, so, and it's kind of like in the beginning, like I said, like they got beef with one another, because like that's kind of what started it all. If Israel would have just had their police, guarding, tell your people, don't go in this area. Don't go in this area for the next month or for the next week, okay? So avoid any confrontation. If we see you like bullying or trying to instigate anything, you're gonna be in trouble too. They should punish their own people if they're doing stuff like that. So like, they should have gave them space, respect, since they allowed the mosque and stuff to be there. They didn't destroy it and all that stuff. Like, if they're coming to worship, let them come and worship. And then let them go. Let them come in peace, let them go in peace. They need help with food and water during the time, then provide it. That's what God would do. So it's like, that's the way to behave and handle that situation, but that's not how they did it. And then at the same time, even on the opposite side, those who are like probably mad because like their father died in the previous war or something like that, they're holding on to that grudge, and yeah, they might throw a rock or something, and that's wrong too. You know what I'm saying? So anybody who is doing not godly, not acting godly in that scenario of that whole month or week or whatever it was, like, they're in the wrong. And everybody who does something wrong is instigating something bigger and greater. You're creating harm, and you're not treating thy neighbor as thyself. You're not loving thy enemy as thy neighbor. What does God say when your enemy strikes to your left cheek? He says, turn the right to them. He doesn't say hit back. He doesn't say retaliate. So if like somebody were to strike you, let them hit the other one. If somebody's doing hate and evil or harm, that doesn't give you the right to do the same. Plain and simple. And if you think it does, then you're not listening to God. Plain and simple. So like, that's everything that's happening right now. And I keep reading articles and like trying to keep up, a little bit of, is it escalating? Is there more? I'm watching proof videos, legit stuff. But I know for a fact, the police and the military, it's just their job. So it's up at the higher command where like, that's where like you can say the corruption is, because it really is. I mean, if you're not doing what God wants, then you're corrupted with sin and evil to some extent. Because it ain't about morally, like, in the eyes of people who live in this world, what they think, because that's irrelevant. Because it's all about the eyes of God. So that's really what's going on. And now all of a sudden he's like, oh, because like, think of it like this. Israel pushed them. They ended up shooting rockets, so they ended up like, so then the Palestinians, they like punched Israel. And then Israel decided to, like, I don't know, bring a gun to a knife fight or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, they brought more power. And now all of a sudden, they're like, okay, you know, or they, let's say they Palestinians punched Israel, but then like they knocked them out. Like Israel came and knocked them out, and they're like way stronger than them. And now they got knocked out, and now they're like, okay, now we're done. We'll act like it never happened. We want peace. Like as soon as they get regained back up or whatever, and plus, like I said, like you're not just. It doesn't just affect that one country. You affect like that whole culture and that whole religion, you know? And it's gonna escalate. It's gonna escalate. 100% it's gonna escalate. You can't just go killing people and thinking it's okay. Like, especially from like a military standpoint and stuff. And like, truthfully, people who are Christians and following God, like if you're in the police force or you're in the military and you're getting told to go do stuff that's like doesn't seem right, you need to just get out. I don't know what you got to do, but you need to like not listen, and you need to get out, because as soon as you decide to listen, you accepted the fact of not listening to God. Just because you're told to do something does not make it okay. And I feel that's one reason why I'd never fight for a military. I live in the United States, and like technically we're supposed to have one of the strongest militaries, but I don't believe in half of the stuff we've already done. And I know how war works, and usually it's two wrongs trying to make it right, but there is no really right. They're not doing it correctly. So I would never fight in any military if the whole upper commandment, like the whole top commands, like officers and stuff, were obedient and following God. But if they were, they would be handling it a lot different. And I promise you this right now, like I don't think any nation is. I don't think any nation is, because it's more than one person. It's accumulated of hundreds, if not thousands, of people at the higher power that are giving these orders, and they're putting their brains together and this and that, and that's not. They're not putting their hearts together, and all their hearts are not pure. You see what I'm saying? So God will not work in their plans or their execution or their strategy, you know? So I don't stand for it. And I think that's one of the things that has kind of gotten manipulated and messed up in our culture in the United States, because like people want to talk about patriotism all the time, and they're always referring to like, you know, when we got this country and stuff, but at the same time we did kill a lot of Indians and took it from them. Like, and even if we didn't kill the Indians at the time, we ended up killing all their bison, all their food, so they would starve to death. Like, that's still killing people. Like, what we did was completely wrong. This was never our land to begin with. Like, I'm thankful that we're here, because I know how unfortunate it is to be living in other parts of the country, but that still doesn't make it right. I'm not gonna turn a blind eye to the truth and the knowledge of it, because I would be arrogant and foolish for doing so. Because I just look at, you know, in the eyes of God, what is right, what is wrong. Because people are very, very arrogant when it comes to this kind of stuff. And, oh, patriotism, I'm a patriot. Like, yeah, like, trust me, I don't want this. I don't want the destruction of democracy and this and that, even though I do think that there has to be better systems, for sure. But when it comes down to it, like, there is so much wrong that has happened. And I'm just talking about this because, like, this parable that we just got done reading is about Jesus is coming, and we're the virgins, so we're supposed to be waiting. You know, we're waiting for the end to happen. It's saying always be ready, because, like, look at this, verse 13. What does it say? Watch therefore, for ye know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man, which is Jesus, cometh. Okay. Watch therefore, because he's saying always be ready. That's why the wise virgins brought extra oil, so they can always be ready. It's our job to always be ready for God, not to, and that's why a lot of people, I feel like they tend to, maybe turn to God or religion, or or try to open up their mind a little bit more whenever there is proof that the end time can happen, because this has happened many times. Back in 2000 in the electronic age, there's gonna be a big blackout and blah 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 blah. This economy's gonna crash, blah blah blah. And then the Mayan calendar and some other stuff. So it's always been there, but people do it through fear. And what does God say? The only thing you're supposed to fear is God himself. That's it. But it's understanding the fear of, it's more of understanding the truth and what God stands for. Because once you realize how tough it is and how you're supposed to live, you realize it's a challenge. It's the hardest test in the world. And if you fall short, God's going to say, just like he said in verse 12, I know you not. Okay? So God's going to turn you away. That's the fear of what we have to have. We have to have the fear of more. We have to have more so the fear of not pleasing God and doing what he wants. Think of it like that. Because a lot of people like to fear hell. A lot of people fear death. A lot of people fear things they can't control. Stuff like that. So when people are on their deathbed, or things look dire, then they try to turn to God through fear, and that's not right. Because as soon as here's what's going to happen. As soon as you think that, whatever was bringing fear to make you think that it's getting close, as soon as that goes away or doesn't seem as intense, guess what? You're going to go back to your daily life. You're not going to be giving God attention the way you already were supposed to, but you were starting to, but you didn't. But as soon as you think you're in the clear, you're going to continue with doing what you were doing before. And that's wrong. God knows that. You can't fool God. So that's one of the big things that happens. So I feel like that's been very important, because literally the whole Israel and Gaza thing has been happening for about the last week. Is when things have been getting haywire. And I can really see it getting way worse because of what they're doing now. And I just want you to understand, before you go and talk about support Israel, support this. No, support good. Support all those people who are not actually harming one another. Support that on both sides, because that's what it comes down to. But those who are actually murdering and killing one another, don't support any of that. Plain and simple, because it's not right. It's not right. God, and I think the biggest reason why God will intervene, it's not, he's not coming to protect. He's not coming back to protect those who are, the one army. He's not coming to protect them. He's coming because that's the final battle. That's the final straw. God's finally put up with everything. He's all right. Because every single time God intervenes, even in the past, Noah's Ark, Sodom and Gomorrah, okay, God's putting up, he's had enough with sin. As soon as he gets fed up with sin, then enough is enough. And then he ends up showing his face and doing something dramatic. And that's what he's going to do. Before, it was destroying certain cultures or certain cities and whatnot. Well, Noah, all sin on the earth. But it's the same concept. He's going to be doing that again, but for good. But in a different way. So, that's the gist of what's going to end up happening. So, it's not... I think people think, God's coming just to protect, it's the Holy Land, so it's God's final stand, so it makes sense that, that's the location. Plus, he knew that's where the last war was going to be at anyways. So he just knows that's where the tension is also. if that makes more sense. So that's basically what's going to happen. Because like at the same time, you know, the rapture's, God says like the rapture's going to happen. He's going to take his people away. So like if that's the case, then there would be no one left that is godly left in that final battle anyways. So it's like, that just gives more proof to what I'm saying. But because I see it a lot. I see it a lot. How people are, you know, trying to support. It's the same thing as you may have heard Colombia not too long ago. Their people are poor and their government raised their taxes, and they were doing a protest and stuff, and their police ended up killing like 20 people that overnight. And then Colombia decided to even bring in their military to control their people. And it's like freedom and freedom of speech has went out the window. I hope everybody understands that. We don't have freedoms. We think we do, but as soon as it affects us and our government does something to us, then we get upset. Like, there is no reasoning with them. Like, trust me, protesting is not the, like, there's a different way of doing it. Like, probably like petitions and going to court and office and like bring it into light, like in a different way rather than trying to get face to face. Okay, because there's obviously beef. If you get face to face, they're gonna instigate. They're gonna, like, you know, protesters throwing rocks, police doing tear gas or pushing and shoving people backwards. Like, that's people like shoving each other. It's only gonna get worse. It'll never go from pushing and shoving to, okay, let's talk this out. It never comes to that, ever. So don't even get into that situation to begin with. There's got to be a better, different way of doing it. So, you know, because like I stand for those. I feel bad for those people who are in Colombia. I've been watching some documentaries and how they're like, I think it was avocados, if I'm not mistaken, but they already have a hard time with water and stuff because they're one of the main producers of avocados. It takes so much water to grow them that they have drained their rivers and stuff, so they don't really have much fresh water anymore, and they're having a really hard time, and plus poverty, and now raising taxes. So I can understand the frustration. I can see them being upset, and that's government. That's like the government solution all the time. Government, like the government, a lot of governments don't have good systems. Plain and simple, they don't have good systems, and that's why like every nation and every government collapses. They don't do a good job of understanding, and I think a big reason why is like they keep taxing money. I thought about this. I talked about this like not too long ago to some of my friends. But think of it like this. I make $1, right? If I make $1, it gets taxed 25%, roughly. So now it's down to 75 cents. If I buy a house with that $1, obviously you're not going to get a whole house for $1, but let's say that $1 goes towards a home. I got to pay taxes on the home, right? Property tax. Then more gets taken out of that $1. Now let's say the home business, they get that, what's left of it, 50 cents of profit. Now all of a sudden it gets taxed from their part end. That's another 25%. So now it's down to 25 cents, and they go spend it at the market on any material. It gets taxed again, and then that person spends it. It gets taxed again. All of a sudden that $1 just disappeared, just through taxes. And I think that they don't understand so much money is getting taken out of taxes that they're not reprinting money to even keep up with their system. So all the time, over many, many years and decades, they always are going bankrupt, but it's because of the system, but like not understanding the system and how complex it is, because it goes pretty deep. There's so many different taxes on so many different things, but you don't understand, like, and that's not even to mention like things like dirty money, drug money, things that are not calculated or taxed on, under the table, just the disappearance and destruction of money, which happens, people hoarding money or storing it. Like, there's a lot of things that go on that, like, where money disappears on top of that. So like they don't take all that into compensation, and like they're not replenishing it the way they're supposed to. And every nation needs to do that. And I don't think any nation does it correctly. It's hard. Like I understand it, but like I also understand the difficulty of it. And you'll never do it 100% correctly. But that I got a big feeling that's kind of like what's been going on for many different governments and many different nations for a long period of time. And if they're not willing to print off the money because of that, then every nation and currency will always collapse, 100%. And what ends up happening, the government resolution is, we'll just tax more, we'll just take more, we'll take more, because, oh, we have this big of a deficit, we need to replenish it. That's their concept, and it's not the right concept. Because you're just taking too much from people, and people are already like, you know, like, some people barely can feed their family and stuff, keep a roof over their head, you know? So that's not the resolution. And the way money used to be, which is not right either, is it's based on how much gold you have, and it probably still is today. So it depends on how much gold your nation has, which that's a stupid system to begin with. Because like if certain countries don't have enough gold, then they can't have a decent economy. Like that doesn't make any sense either. So like there has to be a better way. Like everything that we've been doing for many centuries is just it's a broke system. There's some education for you guys. But all right, let's get back to the Bible. So that was the first parable. So basically it's just saying we should always be ready for Jesus' second when Jesus does come. Because if you're not ready when he does come, you might miss out, and that's your last chance. Every day that you are alive, God's giving you another chance. So it's important for us to really don't take it for granted. Okay? Because you're supposed to live for God, which is going to be the next parable, and it's going to explain it very well. This is so good. This was really good for me. Like, this helped me out even today. All right. So, verse 14, for the kingdom of heaven is a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents. Think of money, okay? He gave him 5, we'll say dollars, okay? Because we can all relate to that. So he gave him $5. But talents, okay, so in the parable, we're going to talk it as money, but, and it also does also, but talents in God's eyes is not money. Okay? So I want to reiterate that. And I will very shortly. So it says, and unto one, he has 3 servants. This guy, okay? He has 3 servants, and if he has servants, then he's like the leader or the owner or the king, right? Which is God. Okay. Servants, that's us. In this parable, there's 3 of them. So he gives one $5, he gives another one 2, and he gives another one 1. $5, $2, $1. To every man according to his several ability. And straight away took his journey. So they all went on their own journeys. Then the one that had $5 went and traded with the same and made 5 more. So now he has 10. Likewise with the guy with 2. Traded. Now he has 4. But he who had 1, he digged a hole in the earth and he hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants told them he reckoneth with them. So they all came together. Verse 20. And so he that had $5 came and he gave, it says, he had 5 talents, came and brought other 5 talents. So 10, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 more. His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Verse 22. He also that had $2, 2 talents, came and said, Lord, I got 2 more. And his Lord said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler of many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Then he which had $1, 1 talent, came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and I went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast, that is thine. His Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and sloth. Now, pay attention. This is what the Lord's going to say about it. Because basically, this servant is saying he knows better, because he knows that the Lord is harsh. He knows that, and like I said, God is a justified God, and that's why I can't emphasize it enough. It's either 100% or nothing. Okay? The whole 99%, 88%, like that's, God he doesn't want none of that. And this will help alliterate it. Because he's basically saying, I know that you're going to be, gathering where you have not strawed. And I was afraid, and went and he hid his $1, he hid his talent that was given to him. Right? There thou hast, that is thine. His Lord answered, this is God speaking. He says, Thou wicked, okay, non-moral, wicked is not moral, and slothful servant. Slothful is lazy. Thou knewest that I would reap where I sowed not, and gather where I not strawed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money. That's why I keep saying money in this situation, because he actually even says it right here. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received my own with usury. Or usury. Take therefore the talent from him, and give it unto him which hath 10 talents. So he says, now go get the $1 and give it to somebody who can, the guy who has 10, right? These talents are referring to what God gives us, okay? God molds us, God creates us, God lets us do things throughout life, which you will learn, God will show you what your strengths are, what your skills are, what your talents are, and that is what we're supposed to use for him. Because right here, I should have received my own with usury. We're supposed to do it. He's supposed to get in return. God is supposed to get in return what he gives us. Okay? He gives us these skills and talents. We're supposed to use it for him. Now, does that make sense? When we don't use it for him, that hurts him. He gets upset about that. So, what does he end up doing about it? Basically, we're wasting God's gifts. Think of it like that. God gives us all these gifts. Everybody's different. I know what my gifts are. I know what God's given me. And that's why I embrace it, and that's why I'm trying to use it for him. Because exactly what this parable says. If you don't use them and use it for yourself, or if you don't empower it, if you don't proceed in it, then God's gonna be very displeased in you, and that's the last thing you want. You don't want God to ever be displeased in you because you just were, what does this say? Slothful, because you were lazy or wicked. It's either one or the other or both, but at the same time, you don't want it to be either. Okay? You don't do it because you were lazy, or you're just too busy, or you didn't, you wanted to live your life and just like everybody else, because that would be living of the world, not in it. Or yeah, you'd be living of the world because that's how everybody else is living, right? You just want to, and then you expect God to be justified and merciful, especially when you know better? No, he's not going to be. And it's very sad because a lot of people are going to be in front of God that day, and he's going to say exactly this: for unto everyone that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance, but from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. Okay? So, for everyone that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. So God gives us talents and stuff. If we use them, we will have more than what we even could imagine. God says, seek thy Lord with all thy heart, and all things will be given unto you. Same concept. Okay? So, in this parable, we're supposed to use what we're given, and we'll have an abundance. We'll have more than what we had before. And that's what we all want. But a lot of us don't have the faith to proceed, and we don't have the faith that God will provide and give us stuff in abundance. So we end up trying to take control of our daily situation in our life. You got to save your money, because if you give it to this one person, like if you see somebody that could use a couple bucks, but you don't give it to them just because you feel like you don't have too much to begin with. Well, guess what? If God put you in that pathway with that person, and especially since you could have talked to them and maybe shared something about God or Jesus with them, something encouraging, some kind of faith, plus when you do a good deed, you're showing God through you to them. Remember that. Even like when you say God bless at the end, like that triggers to the person like they believe in God. So like something as simple as giving a couple bucks and telling them God bless, like that is like when they need it. Like you can tell if somebody looks like they are desperate or they need it, and that, like, when you don't do it, God will punish you. And if you think it's okay, it's far from okay. And you can't stereotype, and you can't keep looking at like, well, charities are stealing money from people, and well, I don't know if this person's going to go buy alcohol or not. Does it matter? No, it doesn't. Because what if they don't? But you don't know, because that person has to make a choice. But everybody has to make a choice. That's the beauty of life. That's what God gives us. But the more you can show godly acts and show God and love and good and care through yourself to other people, most likely they're more willing to do something more that's right, or change the way they live, or the way they believe, or the way they feel, it's a lot more powerful than you think. And when you look at it like what you think or what you hear or what you experience from somebody else, you're stereotyping. One person is not the same as somebody else, and somebody else in the past is not the same as they are in the future or in the present. Because I'm not the same person I was 5-10 years ago. I think we can all relate to that. So therefore, like, if we can change, and that means like they can change, like whatever put them there, and you don't know what put them there. And like I said, like I just got done explaining like the government system and like taxes and all that stuff. It's already a messed up system. People get pushed out of their houses, or like their family, like their mom had cancer and they had doctor bills are expensive. Like, that's a whole different story. And if you watch that documentary on Netflix, it's called Dirty Money. There's a big reason why healthcare is so expensive and medicine and stuff, because there was somebody who suffered from greed who messed up the whole system about 10 to 15 years ago. So that's a big reason why things are so expensive to begin with, and they never should be, because if people are relying on something that's killing them and they need something, it should be available. It should be cheap and available. It shouldn't be like you have to work your whole life and live without because you need it. Like, that's crazy. Like, obviously if there's short supply, but there is not short supply. It's not like we're running out as much as like they want to make it seem. So it's really, but that's because of greed, because somebody was greedy and they wanted to make their shareholders, they cared more about their company than their shareholders. So that evil really affected hundreds of millions of people, if not billions, because I'm pretty positive it's not just America that it affected. I'm pretty positive it affected worldwide. So yeah, go watch that if you want to learn about that. Let's see, verse 29. For unto everyone that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not, right, shall be taken away, even which he hath. Which in the end, when God, because like, what does he say next? And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. Think about that for a second. The unprofitable servant. So for people who, that's God speaking right there. That's because there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Every single time that God, this has come from Jesus' mouth right now, this parable. But every single time God has said gnashing of teeth, he's referring to hell. Every time, which we're about to get to again. You'll see what I'm talking about again. But like in the first parable, the door is shut. I know you not. Okay? God said it before. Depart from me. Go where gnashing of teeth. Go to hell. And here he's talking about unprofitable servant. He's not talking about how much money you're going to have when you die. He's saying, God is saying, I gave you gifts to do my will, to do my works, and you didn't use them for my benefit, for my sake. You are unprofitable to me. In a form of like, you didn't do anything for my cause. God is using us for his cause. Do realize that, right? Because God can't intervene through many, if God intervenes in many different ways to unbelievers, because a lot of people want to see to believe. People want proof, right? So when God does that, especially for somebody like me, the way I look at things and the way I perceive things, if God were to do anything that would be super, I mean, like he has, don't get me wrong. Like he's done things that are like 0.3% chance of happening, which is like a third of 1%, which is like super. Okay, so like 99.7% chance it won't happen. Okay, that's pretty high, right? Because I'm really big into math and science and all that stuff. So I look at things like that. That's how I view my life. That's how I view things that happen and scenarios and stuff. God knows this. So God can't do something that is like 0.0%. Even though he kind of does, but scientists and all this stuff are going to say some kind of fluke where like it's 0.00001% chance that it happens or something. But God has shown me and I've seen miracles and things happen, right? Where it's like super rare and odd, doesn't make any sense. So I know it's God. I know it's God without a doubt. But God can't like do, that's why God speaks to certain people a little bit differently, because I'm very aware of things like this. So God can't do that to me. If he does that to me, he 100% proves to me that he's real, and my faith would go out the door. I would now have, like, I wouldn't have no choice but to believe, because he showed me so strong. And if he did that, then he's basically forcing me. He doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to do that with us, because that defies faith. That's the opposite of faith. That's the one thing that God can't give himself. God can't give himself like our obedience. Like he can't force obedience. He can't force people to love him and obey him. If he does, he's doing it, right? If he forces us, that takes away our choice, and we're no longer doing it because we want to. We're doing it because we have to. And then God's not receiving what he wants. The one thing he can't give himself. So that's why God can't do it with me, something like that. But with somebody else who's a little bit oblivious or a non-believer, he might do something pretty dramatic. like Todd White. Todd White, he never heard about Jesus and God. No one really taught him anything. And he was in a drug deal, and he tried to rip off and scam the drug dealer. The drug dealer, I think he said he even told me he was a cop. So he tried to rip him off. He told me he was a cop. The guy ended up pulling out a gun, a pistol, and shot at him from 3 meters away. That's close, like 6 feet away. Shot at him, a full clip, like 7 bullets. He heard a voice as loud as day, he said, and it said, "I took these shots for you, so now will you live for me," or something like that. Like, he said he heard this voice, and he never got hit. Like, the guy missed every single shot. And I don't know about you, but like, probably the person who has the worst aim in the world would still probably hit something 3 meters away. I don't know if you understand how close that is. 3 meters is about arm lengths away, almost, like from me to this camera. Like, you can't miss a whole full body that close. That's just like, you know what I'm saying? That's that 0.0001% thing that I'm talking about. So that happens. But he hears a voice clear as day. "I took these shots for you. So now will you live, will you live for me, or will you follow me?" And he did not know what the heck happened. But the next 3 days, he went into rehab. After that happened, he was like freaked out. He went to rehab, and for 3 nights in a row, Jesus came to him in a dream. And when he was sleeping, he saw Jesus like 3 different nights in a row after all that. Or like within a short amount of time, even if it was like 2 weeks or so. But the point is, that happened, and it was really close. So God really, really spoke to him in a way where he could experience God. See, God has kind of done that to me. Like, I did get robbed at gunpoint once, and right before I turned around, I heard in my head, clear as day, it said, "Let's get this over with." And it was a little bit weird because it says "let's," like let us. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm pretty positive, and I do feel like I had a guardian angel by my side that night. Even though I do feel like I had a little bit of control of the situation, but like, that's through the talents that God has given me, and that's through psychology and stuff. But the point is, like, I heard God's voice that day, but it like in a different kind of way. It wasn't like, "Hey, I took these bullets for you, or will you follow me?" That's a little bit more profound, in my opinion, because that's you know what I'm saying. So that's how God works. So God works different in different people. That's why people like are so confused, because some people are like, "Oh, I can hear his voice," and some people are like, "I don't know if I hear his voice," or like, "I can't hear his voice. Like, what's wrong with me?" But it's not that something's wrong with you. It's just like, we have different levels of comprehension and belief and faith. So God has to work within those guidelines of each person. If he does it differently, if he does it the same for everybody, he's forcing half of the people to believe. And that defies our purpose here on earth. Like, so God knows how we are. So he has certain guidelines for each one of us on how he interacts with us. Okay? Because he wants us to 100% believe and have faith. And a lot of times things will happen many different times. We've talked about this before, where God won't jump in and intervene until the end. So like, stuff happen. There's something amazing that happened today. There was an amazing miracle that happened today, from somebody I know. And I want to share it, but I want to ask for the permission before I share it, especially since it happened so recent, just in case they're listening or whatnot. But it was God, and it was amazing. So I'll share with you that hopefully next week or soon. I want to get her permission. But like, things happen all the time. But just understand that's how God works. So like, if you're not hearing his voice, or if you're not having super strong signs, you can still pray for God to show you strong signs. But when something is like pretty strong, per se, and you feel it, don't ignore it. Because if you ignore it and you're expecting something stronger, God might not show you that something stronger. And every single time you ignore it or don't think, like you try to contradict it, then you might not get a second chance. Or like technically, probably by then, it's your third chance or fourth chance, fifth chance, which is very generous of God. But when you got to continue to try to seek him, and when something seems like it's not normal, like just know that it's not, okay? Because when you're looking for something stronger, you're looking for something that's going to contradict faith. You're looking for something that's going to force you to believe. And then like God will never do that. Never, ever, 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 ever. He'll not do that. Okay? He'll get really close to that point, but he's not going to go beyond that point. Because if he goes to that point, he ruined what he's doing. Okay? And he's not going to ruin what he's doing. He doesn't, like, he wants us all to go to heaven, but he's not going to allow somebody to go to heaven that's not supposed to exist there. And he's also not going to, and he's justified, so he's willing and accepting to cast us to hell over it if we don't. But that's why there's the whole Bible. That's why that's why he's done so many miracles. That's why he's talked to so many people. That's why you might be here listening to me today. That's like, he's putting people in front of you. Like, he's already done things. You know what I'm saying? So he's a justified God. He says every man will at least hear my name once. So whether it be small or big, and it kind of goes back to Todd White, like, because some people are like, how can everybody hear God's name? God, you know, how is everybody gonna know God once? And this is to an age of accountability, by the way. Because like a kid or somebody who does not know better, like accountability. So I would say accountability, it depends on the person's brain capacity and thought process, and which has to do with childhood and education, and just the, you know, lack of maybe like the understanding and knowledge of like the truth, which is more of like God and like the morals and like what the Bible says and stands for a little bit. Whether it be a little bit or a lot, but like most of it, you know, because like if you don't really know it, then you don't know really what's right or wrong. And I feel like that's kind of like that's what some of the corruption is trying to do nowadays, is they're trying to confuse and make the younger generation really not know what is right and what is wrong, because they're more likely to follow wrong, and they're gonna have a harder time doing right in the eyes of God. So they're winning souls and for evil and Satan, because they don't like God, they don't stand for God. Plus a lot of times they suffer from sin, so that's kind of like why they do it, because like control, and it gives them power. They feel like it boosts their ego and all this other stuff. So that's like deep down, that's why they do it. But that's so, and this has been happening for such a long time. And that can even go to some big tech companies and like social medias even. I just watched a whole huge documentary, which was so good. So good. It's called The Social Dilemma. Go on Netflix. It's called The Social Dilemma. It will blow your mind, but it's real. And these are people who worked at Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and quit, because at a certain point they started to see, even though there was some good from it, they see how much harm it was causing. And it's crazy how much social media is destroying people's minds and society. Suicide rates have more than doubled, if not close to tripled, almost 200% times more higher. And also younger girls who are going to the hospital because they've been cutting themselves and stuff. And a lot of it has to do with like insecurities, and you know, somebody made them feel bad, and those thoughts are in their head, and they beat themselves up about it. So they end up, they want to get rid of the pain. That's kind of like the process of why they do what they do. So like all that stuff, Hollywood, society, social medias, all that stuff has to contribute to the way we've been allowing it to happen in society nowadays, and it's only been getting worse and worse. And that's why I keep saying, like, I feel so bad for this generation. It's because of those kind of things, and the statistics, and the people who are behind it are even speaking out. Like, this stuff is real, this stuff is legit. But the courts and all that stuff are not putting an end to it, because I do think that there's more corruption and greed and power, evil behind it. So that's kind of what's happening. Bribery is a thing. Like, people get paid off to vote or say, or not to vote or say, you know, either or, goes both ways. But that's literally what's happening, and that's what's been happening in this world for a long time, and it's getting really messed up. But go watch that documentary on Netflix. It'll open up your mind. It'll expand your knowledge of what you really don't know. Get you outside of your bubble a little bit, and I think that's very important. We all need to get outside of our bubble. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about this last section here. We got 15 verses. We'll do it nice and fast. It's called the judgment. Oh, I want to read this real quick. Back to the talents. It says original talent. Today, when we speak of talented musician or athlete, we are actually harking back to this parable. A talent in Jesus' time was a valuable sum of money worth about 2 years' wages. Because of this parable, the word acquired a different meaning. Each person in the kingdom of heaven is given a certain number of gifts and opportunities, parentheses, talents, to serve God. We can either waste those opportunities or invest them in a way that furthers the kingdom. That's part of doing further the kingdom, grow the kingdom, get more souls for God, because that's one thing he can't give himself. That's our purpose. That's why it's so important for us to do what we're supposed to, like what I'm doing right now. Like we're all supposed to do this, whether it be a little or a lot, but God gives us gifts to be able to attract more. So, and if we don't use them, then, you know, more people are following Satan, and like in the end, Satan has a lot more. God will have less. Like, you don't want to go to heaven and you be the only one. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then just knowing how many people that you loved or cared about, then they didn't make it either. Like, you know, think about like Todd White. Like, no one came to him about Jesus and he was 34 years old. I wonder how many people were Christians that actually walked by him or talked to him, but never opened up to him before that. Even if he would have rejected, even if he would have, you know, a lot of people do it. You got to be very careful with how you do it. You don't want to be condemning somebody. You don't want to be pushy. You don't want to be aggressive, because that's not godly. Like, you know, none of it is. KOK7, what's up, man? I live in the Netherlands, in the Bible Belt. I don't know what that is. They call it. I'm NOG believing. What does NOG stand for? But here is a Amazon church, 2,600 people. I'm a little bit confused what you're saying. Just re-emphasize what you're kind of saying, and or be more specific, and maybe I'll look it up and research it if that's what you're talking about. But hey, KOK Sock 7, if you just got here, I would highly suggest watching the beginning of the video as soon as I get done. I'm almost done here, but go back in the video. Today was really good. I kind of talked about a lot of stuff that's very important, and it helps. But yeah. Okay, let me finish this real quick. So basically, KOK7, just so you know, what I do here is we're just doing a Bible study. King James Version is one of the most original versions of the Bible, right? It hasn't been touched as much as the other Bibles. And basically, it's not about religion. Not about religion here, not at all. It's about a relationship with God through Jesus, because he died on the cross for us. But just understanding what God says to some of the prophets and people, but more so importantly, the New Testament, and what Jesus is saying. You can see on the screen, all these are red. These are words that came out of Jesus's mouth, and the disciple heard it, and the disciple wrote it, right? Because he had many different disciples with him. That's why there's many different books like Matthew, John, Peter. Okay, so there's a lot of different books. So that's why they all tell similar stories, but like a little bit differently, and some new ones and whatnot, because some of them are in the present with them, and some are not at the times. So that is the most important thing, right? So from somebody who doesn't believe, if it is true, it's important to at least know. Well, it's important to like just know, because if it is true, you got to know. If you don't know, if you're not willing to at least read it once, right? Who's to say that, like, if you were to be like, I don't got time, or it's too much, or I don't, well, a lot of times people don't know how to understand, or it's hard to read. That's what I'm here for, okay? That's my purpose, is to help with understanding. So to give it one good try, to listen, so that way you at least know. It's like going to school. Like, everything that you know nowadays, you would not have known if you never learned it from school, right? Or from your parents. You had to learn it somewhere to begin with. That's what this is. The book, the word, the truth. And if you don't give it a try at least once, you're actually making a decision on something you don't even know. It's the same thing when Jesus died. When Jesus died on the cross, they're like, you know all the brutal stuff that they did to him, right? Like the story. You at least heard about it, okay? They're stabbing him, thorns on his head, lashes on the back, like hundreds. All this, nailed him to a cross to die, like the worst way you can probably die. They did all this harmful, harsh stuff. One of Jesus's last words is this: forgive them, for they do not know. And that's what it is. A lot of people don't know, or they may have had some bad experiences. I get it. Like hypocrites. If you don't understand everything, you're gonna look at things a lot differently. So people think it's like things happen because it's like this way, or like it should have been this way or this, but you don't understand or you don't know. So you look at it differently, but it's not correct. So like you have like this viewpoint, and at least you're not having a correct understanding. It's okay still not to believe if you choose not to, but at least know the truth and how it actually works in the process, and then make your own decision. To make your decision based off what other people say or think, or like little bits and pieces of what you have maybe learned or something, that becomes like, you know what I'm saying? That's very bad. Okay, let me finish this and then I'll read what you say. Okay, I want to hurry up and get along with this here. All right, so this is the judgment. This is verse 31. It says, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon his throne of glory. This is when Jesus comes towards the end. This is the end of Matthew. So like Jesus is kind of talking more towards the end, right before he gets crucified. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate one from another, as a shepherd does sheep from goats. Okay, this is really good here. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand and the goats on his left. The reason why he uses sheep and goats in this situation is because they're very similar, right? And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, the goats on his left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, come ye blessed of my Father. This is Jesus talking about God. He's like, come into the kingdom that is prepared for you, heaven, from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and ye gave me meats. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. This kind of gives another, because like some kind of vegans and stuff like to say like you shouldn't eat meat, but like there's another reason. I always like to, like, if you want to be vegan, that's fine, but don't try to say that like they didn't in the Bible, because they did. Like in the eyes of God, at least. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and you came unto me. Then he says this, then shall the righteous answer him, this is the other side, when saw ye the hungered and fed me? So these are all questions. They're saying like, when did you do this for me? Same exact thing. Stranger, naked, clothed me, sick, took care of me, in prison, came and saw me. And the king shall answer and say unto them, this is God. He's going to say, verily I say unto you, in as much as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done unto me. These are people, because remember in the beginning it says righteous, right? People who think that they do morally right. And that's why I re-emphasize the whole sheep and goats. They are similar, right? And this goes back to earlier in Matthew when we read it, when the Pharisees, people who do right, they say, but God, I did good works for you, he says. They say, I did good works for you, things that you would be pleased about, like things that you kind of talk about. And he says, depart from me, I do not know you. It's because the conception of people thinking that you can just be morally right or you can do good deeds, like, oh, I'm a good person, but you might be a good person in some aspects, but not all aspects. And then it depends on what sin it comes down to. What sin do you suffer from? Is it greed? If it's greed and money, guess what? When it comes down to giving a little bit more than you should just for somebody that needs help, we talked about this last Bible study, that the two greatest commandments, the Pharisees asked Jesus, they said, what are the two greatest commandments out of all of them? He says, love thy God with all thy mind, all thy heart, and all thy soul. Then he gave a second commandment, love thy neighbor as thyself. So you have to put yourself in everybody's shoes. And I don't mean just the people you like or the people you can stand or you know what I'm saying? Like think about your greatest enemy or the person that you don't like, right? You gotta put yourself in you gotta put yourself in their shoes, and you gotta treat them as if they were treating you. So if you do anything that you wouldn't want done unto you, you don't do to somebody else. Plain and simple. Because you're supposed to love thy neighbor as thyself, and you're supposed to love thy enemy as thy neighbor. So that means love everybody as yourself. So a lot of people are like, oh, I live a good life, da 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 da. Yeah, you might do some things right, but here's the other thing. Do you do it in spite of yourself? Or do you do it in the spite for God? That's another thing. Because that's what God is saying right here. He says, ye have done it unto me. He goes, verily I say unto you, and as much as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Okay? Verse 41, then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared. Okay? So he's saying you're going to hell, but listen to what he says. Prepared for the devil and his angels. People like to say, well, why would God make heaven and hell? Like, why would he punish? He's justified. He gives us the word. You're listening to it. You're making a decision. A creator can destroy anything he makes. I always like to use this like a painter. If a painter makes a painting and he doesn't like the painting, he can throw it away and destroy it. It's justified. He created it. He created us here on earth to have a choice. He gave us knowledge. We can decide to do it or not. He doesn't want anybody who does not want to be his servant and obedient. If you don't want to follow God, then you are voluntarily saying, I'll take hell instead. That's basically the gist of it. And right here, I thought it was really good because right here, Jesus is saying that God even only made hell for the devils and angels. Because if you think about it in theory, if we all did choose God the way he wants us to, and we all do make it to heaven, guess what? No one would be in hell. Guess who would be in hell? The devils and the angels. Who started all this? That's the only reason why we're even here to begin with, because it all starts with Lucifer, who was God's right-hand angel. He was the most beautiful. He made all the heavenly hosts. But when God was absent, Lucifer convinced half of them that he was better, that he was awesome. He suffered from pride. pride because he wanted what God had. He was already better than the other angels, so he wanted even more. That's why God said when he came back, he was hurt. He said, fine, I'll cast you down to earth. He said, that's why this world is wicked, and that's why this world is Satan's kingdom. Okay? That's why it's so crazy and chaotic, and that's why there's so much evil, and that's why there's so much corruption, and that's why there's so much bullcrap. People like to try to use excuses, and people are misinformed. That's why it's important that, like, forgive them for they do not know. But I'll give you a small little example. There's a documentary that I just got done watching. It's also in the Dirty Money, and it's a plastic company from Taiwan. Taiwan came to America in Texas, and they make plastic, but they don't make like plastic things. They make just the plastic beads, so like tiny little BBs. Okay, and it takes many chemicals to make these BBs. They sell all the plastic BBs to companies, and then they melt it and create plastic bottles for water and stuff like that. So this company suffered from greed and money because they didn't want to do the proper like filtration and stuff. So they were polluting a lot of the water and the air horribly. Like, they did a bunch of tests, and it's like dramatic, right? So like the animals are dying. The people who are working there are starting to get like boils and hives from the chemicals. So like a lot of people are suffering health-wise. And what happens is even the younger generation, the kids, are starting to get born with cancer. People are like, why would God let cancer happen? God didn't make cancer, but Satan did through somebody else's greed. That's what happens in society, and that's what's been happening so much in this world. That's why there's so many diseases and cancers and this and that. But it's through, and this is how corrupt and crazy it is. They have so much evidence. There's a group of people and workers and whistleblowers and all these people come together saying, hey, something like this is bad. We need to do something. This is not right. This is morally not right because they're harming kids and stuff. Like, no, like we got to put an end to this. But the company is so rich that they would be bribing and paying off like politicians. They would be, oh, we'll pay for some of the roads. We'll pay for some of the schools. We'll just keep giving money until people are happy, so that way they'll let us continue doing what we're doing. And that's what's happening. And it got all the way up to the federal court case, and all of a sudden it just gets dropped. It's because money talks, greed talks. Like, plain and simple, they'll always use stupid excuses like, oh, well, we're creating thousands of jobs, like we're doing good. Yeah, you might be doing some good, but you're doing, technically, if you kill one person, you're doing way too much harm. And if you're doing any kind of sin, technically, you're in the eyes of God, you're doing too much, plain and simple. So when it comes to society and stuff, like, when is enough enough? You got to kill millions of people for it to be enough? Or like, why isn't this 1,000 bad enough? Like, how can we, and from politician and like people who can stand up and say something, for you to turn a blind eye and not say something about it, or do something about it, or just to let it happen or let it slide, you are just as guilty for doing it just as the person is who created it. So you're both in the wrong. In the eyes of God, you will both be convicted for that reason. And that blood and that harm will be on your hands in the eyes and on Judgment Day. Plain and simple. God will say, depart from me, I do not know you. Like, you can't just like, oh, well, I'll do that, but then I'll do everything else nice and godly. But you're not gonna have God to begin. You're not gonna have the Holy Spirit in you to begin with. You're gonna think you are. You're just basically trying to trick yourself and God through your guilt to hope that one day you go to heaven and not hell, because technically you have probably the fear of hell and heaven, which is not right, because God says the only fear you're supposed to have is fear of God himself. And it's more so displeasing him. You should feel bad and sorry that you knew better, but yet you still didn't abide by it. You weren't obedient. That's the fear. It has nothing to do about heaven and hell. Heaven is the privilege, the bonus, and hell is just the repercussion and the payment of the opposite. That's all it is. It's not supposed to create fear, and it's not supposed to create like greed towards heaven. Like it's not, that's not what it's there for. So let's get back into the scripture real quick, and then I'll read any of the stuff that you're saying. KOK7, if you're still there. Only got a couple more verses. Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, depart from me into the everlasting fire that was prepared for the devil and his angels. I love that part, because he's just saying that, you know, it was never intended for us, but you know, if we want to follow that Lord, right? Because there's two lords. There's God, there's Satan. He's the Lord of the wicked world. But he's not stronger than God. When God casted him here, he said what? He said, I'll give you as much power as me, but not more. Okay? And I don't want to get too much into it, because I'm sure I'll talk about it again sometime. For I was hungered, and ye gave me no meats. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you took me not in. I was naked, and ye did not clothe me. I was sick in the prison, and ye did not visit me. Then shall they also answer him. Okay. This is good. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw ye thee and hungered? And when did we see you thirst? And when did we see a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? This is God saying it before you guys. This, like, God is saying, was I not hungry and you did not give me no meat? When I was thirsty, did you give me no drink? This is like being kind unto others, like doing, like, love your neighbor as thyself. Letting God live. This is why God is a spirit. That's why when we do believe and we do allow the Holy Spirit to come into us, that we then have the voice and the guilt of when we are not doing godly. And that's why you're supposed to do things out of character. You're supposed to do things out of humility, is what they call it. And that is basically, you care when a lot of people hold back right there because they care about what other people are thinking or saying or how they look. And that holds people back from actually doing God's will and using the talents that he gave you. If your talent is to recognize when people are in need, and you don't give in to that, and you don't help when people are in need, you're not using your talent, the gift that God gave you, to know and when and who to approach when necessary. So, like, when you walk by somebody and you don't help them, but you know, like, they could, in your eyes, you'd be like, well, they could probably need help, but then you're going to start doing all these what ifs. That's the devil speaking right there. Well, what about these hypocrites? What about these other people? What about this other scenario that I heard about or that happened to me? You're stereotyping, and then you're putting everybody in the same category. I've mentioned it before, no two people are the same, and nobody's the same as they were yesterday. So, like, you know, 2 years ago, if I would have done something bad to somebody, which I probably did, guess what? It's not me today. So, like, because I gave my heart and to God, to Jesus. So, like, I don't stand or live for that. And I'm sorry if I ever did anything, you know. I try to tell people I'm sorry, I forgive. Like, it eats me up. It eats me up where, like, you know, I try to apologize. I try to reach out to people. I'll write them letters. I'll do all kinds of stuff. And it's like, to a point, like, you know, sometimes I might even, like, I get so hurt about it that, like, how could I even let myself get to that point where I did that? Because I knew better way before that, but that's because I was brought up in church a little bit, and I knew better at a younger age. But I was stubborn, and I fell away from God for a long, long time. I was living as a, you know, I was falling short, and even though I somewhat knew better. So, but how did I let myself even get to that point? You know, like I like that's when you really start to know, like, see, a good person, like a person who doesn't believe in God, like that kind of stuff wouldn't eat them up to a point where, like, it's that empathetic, I guess, like empathy, like I don't know if I'm saying that right, but sympathy maybe, like where you feel like because I'm literally putting myself in their shoes, like how, because like I know that like all of us are supposed to have that sympathy for one another. So how could I stand for something or know better and still be part of the problem to an, you know what I'm saying? So like that is the whole point. Like that's the big difference between like thinking like being that goat and being that sheep. It's like, because with God you have to be 100%. You can't fake it. Like, and what's the point of faking it, being 80%? And also half of the stuff you do is more for yourself. Like, okay, so you end up like, I know it's dark in here. So like some people will like, oh, I'll go do something nice for somebody, but only if there's something in it for me. Maybe if I do something nice for this person, maybe eventually they'll do something nice for me. That's looking forward to, like that's deceiving. You're trying to manipulate and you're trying to deceive. You're not doing it for the act of kindness, because the act of love is doing something without anything, and I mean anything, in return. You gotta think like, oh, I'm gonna do this nice thing for this person and they're not gonna do anything in return or give me anything back. Well, does that change your mind on helping or doing something? If it does, or if it makes you hesitate, then you're not doing it right. Like you just need to do, you know what I'm saying? You do it because you know it's good, it's for good. You don't do it because the consequence of, okay? I only got 3 more verses, I think. So this is people saying like they didn't know, you know, like, oh, I didn't know that somebody like was hungry or needed water or was naked and needed clothes. Like, you're telling me you didn't walk by a poor person who had like holy clothes in there, like that looked like they were less fortunate? That's either a lie, or you're oblivious, or you're turning a blind eye because you don't want to look at it or think like that. That's what that is. Or that's just being arrogant. Like thinking that like everybody, like that there should be like different classes, like we're not supposed to be humane, we're not supposed to treat each other equal. That's crazy to me. That's literally unhumane. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw ye the hungered, blah blah blah, like when did we, verse 45, then shall he answer them, saying, this is God speaking, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me. It's the same thing he kind of mentioned earlier, is you're not doing it for my sake, you're doing it for your own sake. And that's where I think a lot of people get it twisted. They think, they're like, oh, I'm a good person, oh, I do good things. But a lot of times they're not doing it for God, they're doing it for themselves. And if they knew that they would get less in return from it, they would probably not do as much. And that right there proves that it's not with good intentions, not with the true intentions, which is true love, which is, you have to understand, and that's what God tries to show and explain to us in the Bible. Okay, that's why I like the knowledge, right? Forgive you for you do not know, but it's our job to seek it so that we do know. That way we can actually make our own decision based off that. Because either way, if it is true, whether you don't know or whether you choose, whether you do know and then you choose, the result will still be the same. You'll still go into everlasting fire. You won't be in the kingdom of heaven. But the most important thing is you're gonna displease God, and he's gonna be hurt by it, and you will be punished. So like, the result will still be the same. So what does it hurt to spend a little bit of your life here on earth to actually know? And let's say this. Let's say it is true and it does happen. I mean, it might hurt more if you actually knew, technically. Yeah, it would hurt more if you actually knew. Because like if you knew and then you knew that you made the choice, and that's what put you there for sure, even though you still did, because every man will hear his name. He says that. But like the more you know, and then the more you fall short, and the more you were stuck in hell, oh, it'd be awful. It would literally be awful. Because that would hurt me more. Like that would, like knowing that you were a fool, that you were arrogant, that you were, you know, you listened to other people, you wanted to fit in society. Because Jesus says you're either in this world or you're of this world. A lot of people are of this world because they want acceptance. They care what people think and say about them. That's a horrible way to live. Break free of that. Break free of that, man. Like, if for anything, like just that alone is pretty nice. I'll tell you that. I love being different. I love not feeling like, hey, I care about what other people think of me. I love like, it's like peace. I don't know how to explain it, but and casting your anxieties and cares, because that's part of what it is. Like, that's anxiety right there. Insecurities and all that stuff. I don't got any of that. Nope. People create insecurities in other people. All right, last verse here. Then shall he answer them, saying, verily I say unto you, inasmuch have you done it for me. Okay, here we go. This is really good. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. Somebody asked this last stream, and they said, is hell eternal? And I get why they asked that, because like, why would God punish people forever? And there's a point, you know, he could change his mind at a certain point, but at the same time, at least in his word, he says it right there, everlasting punishment. So like, let's just take his word for it, that he won't change his mind, and that it is. Okay? Because the fear of just like God's plan, God's concept, and the aftermath of what he decides, that has to stand true. Okay? So he says everlasting punishment, it's everlasting punishment. Don't think that you're gonna get, like, he's gonna have mercy on you, because he doesn't say it. So but the righteous will have life eternal forever. So all right. Whew. That's pretty much that for today. Next Sunday we have a big chapter. I won't be talking as off chart, like on topics, other things like I did today, even though they did go along with it. Like, you know, everything I said correlated with one another. But KOK Sock 7, let me see a little bit what you just said. Say, I know, not believing, but live next to a church with 2,600 people. Okay, so it's just a bigger church. Doesn't matter if it's a small church, big church. It just matters on their belief, but more so, like, do they stick to the Bible through and through? And I mean through and through, like word for word, because this is what's important, right? Things that come from God's mouth, prophets, and Jesus himself. That's really all that matters. Doesn't matter size of church and stuff. That doesn't matter. In the Netherlands, there is a place where live Bible people. I don't know what you mean by that. And I live here a perfect life, not believing, but everybody his own mind. Lucky. Okay. I wouldn't say, okay, so to each his own on what they think a perfect life is, but any life living in sin, you're just tricking yourself. So like, and the purpose of our life is not what we think it is here on earth. Like, everything, if I were to ask you what you would define as perfect life, it's not the same. I don't see it the same. You're gonna say family, you're gonna say my job, you're gonna say my money, and that's all irrelevant. Because your career is not your purpose. Money can come and go. What if all your money's in your house and then all of a sudden you have a fire and it's all destroyed and all of a sudden you got nothing? So now what? You don't have a perfect life? I know people who've been super poor and broke and not even a family and have a perfect life. You look at materials and that's not, it's your viewpoint. Everyone has his own mind. Exactly. His own mindset, his own viewpoint. That's exactly. Yep. That's basically, I know you most of the clash time with a lot of viewers, but it's love that you're be yourself. I know all the I know all the religions. My parent day are Christian is good. I'm guessing you're saying your parents are Christian? That's good. That's really good. And you don't know all religions. I don't even know all religions. Get out of here. That's why as soon as I get done with King James Version, which is going to take me forever, I'd like to at least skim through different parts and pieces of different Bibles and religions to see a lot of the similarities. But I want to see, I do a lot of research before just to see if some of it correlates. Such as in Genesis, it talks about Enoch, which is Cain's first son after he gets cursed, and he writes he writes a book, but it's not in my Bible, for example. So there's that too. But all right, take care, you guys. Much love. Stay safe. God bless. I'll see you guys next week. Take care. I didn't realize I had the music playing the whole time. Hopefully it wasn't too loud. Dang it.